Hello. I don't have nothing prepared. It's just from the heart, my experiences, what I've grown up. It's just a story about how I wanted to start in the field of cultural heritage preservation. I'm actually a cultural guardian now for the Innu Nation. I've been there for 3.5 years, so I've learned a lot in my last 3.5 years working with the Innu Nation, and found out the main issues with we didn't have nobody ever in this position, so we were very behind compared to other organizations. Our people were moved into settlement in the 60s, so we are one of the last people that have been, I guess, living nomadic lifestyles in North America. So we are now finding our footing and our grounds to be able to work on preserving our own cultural heritage that was taken away from us. Um, I started my journey, I guess, my whole life. My father was a chief, president of the Innu Nation. He was a chief land claims negotiator. My whole life was surrounded by politics and about First Nations rights, Indigenous rights. He traveled to the UN talking about the Innu people. He brought our plight to the world. So my whole life, every dinner table, I never got a bed as a child. It was just given out to everybody. So anybody that came, we had people from all over the world stay with us. So it started when my father started a lot of work with archaeologists. We have the Churchill River was flooded with a dam by Smallwood, and there's a Smallwood reservoir, it's called, and it's bigger than I think. Well, I can actually tell you that Smallwood River reservoir was 6,525 kilometers squared, so square kilometers. It's a huge area that was flooded, and my father worked with archaeologists, and he wanted to just survey the area to see what was left after the damage of the flood. We were never consulted on the dam of this river. One, he told me my great grandfather had caches of his traps and things left in that area. It was a big gathering place for the Innu people. The Innu from all over, the Quebec Innu would join with the northern Innu, so the Mushwa Innu, as well as the southern Innu, would all meet in this area. It was a really, really important place for the Innu people. So my father was saying that his grandfather, so my great grandfather, actually went back, and he went back to nothing. Everything he owned was gone. Everything, the land that they knew was gone. So he wanted to go with the archaeologists and just survey the area to see if they can find anything, any trace of the Innu people left. And they were gone for a week or so, and he came back and he told me his stories. I remember lying in his arms as a kid in bed after, and he was telling me about everything. I was 7 years old, and he said that there was nothing. There was no sign that the Innu people ever existed on this important land. That everything we knew was gone. It was wiped away. And he said that all they found was like a rusty bucket and some small fragments of like bowls and plates, but there was nothing. It was like we never existed on this important land, and that was something that struck, like, stayed with me for the rest of my life. He said that him and my uncle Dominic were sitting down after a long day of just surveying rough terrain, like it was all flooded. There was trees fell everywhere. It was a really hard place to walk through. There was nothing. They're really discouraged after finding nothing. So he said that they sat on a hill and they were talking and looking at the ruins of how everything was gone. And they looked down over the hill and they seen what they thought was a weird rock. And they looked down over the bank and they went to investigate further and they found out it was a skull eroding from the sandbanks of where the water levels had risen. and the grave was eroded out of the bank. So the half of her body was gone, washed away with the reservoir flooding, and all that was left was her just her upper part of her body, and they knew it was a her because she still had braids on either side. She had a duck feather pillow. She was, beautifully adorned to be buried, and they said that was one of the hardest things to see, to know she was washed away by that water, that we were never consulted, we were never told that this was gonna happen. We didn't have time to go move our people that we had buried, our family, our ancestors. They have used this land for thousands of years. So my father and my uncle took her back and buried her about 20 meters in where she wouldn't come out of like a road out of the sandbank again. And with that story, came like everything that I've ever wanted to do. I said I would never let that happen again to my people, that we would never have to come back and discover that something was gone, that our ancestors, everything we worked so hard for was gone. So that was my entwined, like how I became what I wanted to do. And I went to school for archaeology. I actually did a lot of field school. I started in high school. So I did a lot of work where we worked in a place in the community. I've worked all over Labrador, but the one in our community is one of the biggest sites Newfoundland and Labrador ever found, and it dates back to about 7,000 years ago. So the Inuit people have been using the community of Shadjeet, which is now a community, but we've been using the community of Shadjeet for at least 7,000 years. And like the importance of land, place, culture is just, it speaks volumes in these archaeology stories. And to know like the importance, and like our community is really good. We have an MOU with the Provincial Archaeology Office, Newfoundland, Labrador, that we will look after archaeology before housing. So all this that we were excavating was because there's housing lots trying to go there. That's how it was actually discovered when they were bulldozing it. And luckily somebody knew what to look for. And they end up calling us, and went in and started excavating. We found some amazing, amazing finds in this area. And it's just the the importance of cultural heritage, and not like it ties us to our land. It ties us to who we are. We have a lot of social issues and things now in the community that I think can be brought back if we reconnect with our culture. We still practice, a lot of our people still go into the country for like times during the spring melt, when the ducks and the geese and stuff come back from the south. So we take that time when we go back on the land, and when our people are on the land, you can tell that we are different people. We're happy, we're connected, we have a purpose again. And I think to have I've that's why I'm striving so hard to get our cultural center open, to bring back these things that are in the Canadian Museum of History, that are all over the world, that are ours. I've talked to elders, and one of the most important things I think he said was, one of the elders I talked to was, once it comes back to us, the language, the stories, the everything comes back with it. We can remake them, we can reteach that language, we can have that connection again, something that was taken away from us. So I think my striving to get the cultural center completed, I think I feel like it will really help the social aspects. There's the land use, everything, that we'll be able to have that connection again to who we are, that we're not struggling to figure out what we are still, like why we always have that why. But I think with being able to reconnect ourselves with the land and our culture, and be able to bring back these things that we weren't allowed to practice, I think that's going to be a big way to bring everything back. But